Thank you so much. Hey, Tampere. I just want to thank everyone, and not to boost anyone's ego, but I've had a really good 24 hours here in Finland. I travel a lot, and it's not often I meet amazing people like the ones I've met here. And I want to later on figure out why that is, so I can take that with me back to Sweden and share it and hopefully implement that over there. So for me, I'm not the CEO anymore. We have a new CEO for Borderless Blockchain Alliance, but the reason why I set up Borderless Blockchain Alliance was because I've been dying for an impact. And the reason why I joined the blockchain space, or what we call Web3, was because I was very attracted to the topic of decentralization. It's a very attractive one. It's a good concept. In tech, we use it for creating technical infrastructure that decentralized, but I think that's where we've failed. When we look at Web3 as a whole, even if I'm a big believer in Web3, the truth is that we've all failed. You have a couple of L1 and L2s and the likes, and they don't have any transactions, they don't have any users. And the reason for that is because we don't understand that concepts is merely just concepts. If you can't implement it, it really doesn't matter. And one of the reasons why we jumped into decentralization was because engineers created blockchain for engineers, also a big problem. And I've understood that the reason why decentralization is just a concept and won't work is because we don't have a label that everyone can understand. And I call that equal access to opportunities. And why that is so important is because if we want to achieve decentralization, we need to first become free. If we are not free, we will never be able to implement decentralization in a technical way. And I know that everyone is talking about equal access to opportunities, innovation, accelerating mass adoption, but I call that it's just, again, just a concept. And if we want to make something out of that, we need to realize that that's just perception of reality. And that's our own perception of reality. Then we have something that I call reality. And reality is that we use models that we implement with emerging tech. We have blockchain, we have AI now, it's the big hype. But the problem is that we are still entangled with the same exact models that we used for the past 70 years. It goes, even in school, it's the same thing. You send kids to school. I have a kid, he's 8 years old, and when he goes to school, he gets a 70-year-old curriculum. It's not aligned with reality. It's not. The problem is that we don't value young people. We don't. And I believe that the whole thing with Web3, it's amazing concepts, it's beautiful concepts, but no one can actually implement it. And the reason why I founded Borderless Blockchain Alliance was because I listened to a lot of people, and one thing I realized is that we all sit on a lot of excuses. And that's what Web3 should solve for us. So I listened to everyone's excuses, and then I thought, you know what, let me build something, let me build a platform that can actually remove the obstacles for people and give people access to equal opportunities. And the reason why that is so important is because when we look at all the different sectors, areas, it's all failing. And if we don't actually accept that and realize that, we can go on and talk about whatever, try to solve X, Y, Z, but then reality is reality, and reality is that we actually fail. So now the question is, how can we actually solve this? How can we accelerate innovation? How can we get mass adoption in Web3? Because on the technical side, it failed. Capital won't solve it. We got a lot of capital, right? And nothing happened. And I think the reason for that is because when we look at the models that exist today, the old models as I call it, we are so entangled and so used to that no one questions, is this a good model? Let's take, to give you a simple example, take the venture capital model. It's how should I put it? If we look at the ratio, it's 200,000 to 1. So if we look at 200,000 to 1, that's you have to go through around 200,000 startups to make around 100 investments. From those 100 investments, you only bet on one, right? So now we have 199,999 startups. Let's say there is 2 founders, right? You've just destroyed life for almost 400,000 people, thanks to the model. And that's why it's so urgent that we do something about it, because if we look at society as a whole right now, there is a lot of young people, and for them, if they don't become successful, get a Lambo, a Ferrari, or whatever they want, before they are 20, 21 years old, life is over. And as we know, it's very hard for people to step up after they failed. And when you look at everything that's going on at the moment, when we look at the different bank collapses, everyone is focusing on what's the next thing, but no one actually addresses the problems. And I would say the reason why everything is collapsing is because you have wrong people that never built anything, have access to borrowed money, and they just do the old shotgun model. And it works for them, they make money, but then you have the results, and the results is that you get a bunch of people that will never actually step up and do something again and build something again. So that's where I come in. And I think that before tech, before innovation, we need to address something that's crucial. And when I've been thinking about this for a very long time, I try to solve it with tech. I'm a builder. I love to build stuff. But I realized that there is something way more powerful than tech, and that's models. I assume all of you guys are familiar with Henry Ford. Henry Ford implemented a model called 9 to 5, and we are using it still, right? I'm not arguing if it's good or bad, but the model is so powerful that we've been following that for almost 100 years, if not more. So instead of focusing on how tech can solve something, we should focus on what is the model we follow and how efficient is it. And we need to realize that the model doesn't work, and we need to implement something else. And that something else is equal access to opportunities. And the reason why I call it equal access to opportunities is because we need to build the same way as a country is building their infrastructure. We need to build infrastructure and tools for the youth so they can jump in and leverage the model of equal access to opportunities, because I believe that every human being has equal value. A lot of people, especially younger people than me, they can achieve way more than I can do, but they don't have the right tools. And everything is surrounded and everything is focused on money, capital. So when you look at how we are investing in startups today, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And the reason for that being is because if you focus everything on money, you miss the outcome. And today, it's very attractive for people to raise funds, because if you raise funds, you're successful. But the only way I see it is that you just took a big debt on your company. That's what you did. So money won't solve it. And I believe that collaboration, I know everyone is talking about collaboration, but no one is actually implementing it. And the way we go about it is that we bring young people, no matter background, and no matter who they are, we let them into our ecosystem, and they can become whoever they want, whatever they want. And that's something that every institution, every government should be focused on. Because I know that we've been talking about equal access to opportunities, but then we have reality, and reality doesn't look like that. So to give you a short story, we have a great young guy, 21-year-old. His name is Keish from UK. Before he met us, he was living on the streets, no background, not been to school. Today, 6 months later, he has his own venture firm with our model, and he's closing deals. He's making $20+ million per deal. So this shouldn't be my responsibility. This should be a collective responsibility. And And the reason why it's working is because we see beyond our own ego. We understand that money won't solve anything. So what we actually need to do is to see beyond ourselves, do everything we can to build the infrastructure I was talking about and the tools to give it to the youth. Because if we look at us and old people, no offense to anyone, we failed. We failed, and we have to point fingers at ourselves because that's the case. And we've tried a lot of models, we've tried a lot of ideologies, we've printed a lot of money, but still we have the same outcome. So if we understand that we always get the same outcome no matter what innovation we get, shouldn't we then do something about it? Shouldn't we start pointing fingers at ourselves? And I know it's hard. It's hard to say that I was wrong or I failed, but like if that's the case, then that's the case, and you have to actually realize that, because that's when you can actually do something about it. If we go around and talking about what we need to solve, what we can do to solve, everyone has been talking about it. Everyone is talking about what's needed, but no one is talking about how we actually go about it. And to be able to do that, we need to first go back to where it actually failed. And when it comes to the current state of society, as I call it, we believe that the knight in shining armor will come and save us, but that's not the case. And for me, as a human being, it's really important that I share the knowledge I have, what I do, so other people can ask themselves, whatever I'm doing, why isn't it working? With all the amazing organizations out there, all the hard work they're doing, why isn't it working? So it goes back to what I said initially with the different models, right? A model is way more powerful than any tech can be. When we look at Web3, again, I'm a big believer in Web3, but I realize that I can't see it from a technical standpoint. I need to see it from how the masses will embrace it. And when I look at that, it's too big of a gap. It is at the moment. So when we go about solving problems, we look at what's happening, we look at the latest hype, AI. Someone says that it's a different sector, but it's not, it's also Web3. And we had something amazing called OpenAI, ChatGPT. And amazing tech, can do a lot for a lot of people, especially for the Web3 space. You can accelerate everything, you can cut costs. But then, due to same old models, what happened? Microsoft bought it, right? And Microsoft will never change their model. It's hard. You can't. You have too many people, too many shareholders. You can't go and convince them and say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to introduce a new model of working. It's hard, because if you've made money for the past 20 years and it's working, your model is working, you don't want to change that. It's really hard to change that. The reason why I'm touching on OpenAI is just to share and explain how that's keep repeating over and over again. And if we look at OpenAI as is, it could be something really good. I believe so, at least. But then the outcome was Microsoft went in, they bought it, they monetized it, and they will run the game, basically. The reason why that's so devastating is because when we look at all the tech layoffs that have been happening from the biggest companies, the first thing they will do, or what they are doing at the moment, is they set up their own AI startups. Low-hanging fruit. The problem with that, and the reason why me and our partners, we didn't invest in the AI space, was because we understood that if you have something as big as Microsoft and OpenAI, and they get access to your data, what's stopping them from building that? So we filter around 300 startups, 300 AI startups, and I just had one simple question to them. Are you guys building this on paid API calls? They said yes. Immediately, I said no. The reason why I said no was because I knew what OpenAI will do. And 2-3 months later, they introduced their plugins, right? 300 AI startups, as I know, collapsed immediately. So that's what we have. And I can tell you that it won't change. It won't change. We saw that in Web3. We are seeing that in the AI space. We are seeing that globally, right? So shouldn't we all talk about what we can do, right? Not what is attractive or what the new trend is, but what we actually can do. And I believe that every single human being can add value to an ecosystem where it's about collaboration and growth. And when you look at Web3, that's one of the main reasons a lot of people joined. I'm not talking about the tech guys. The tech guys was in it for something else, but the non-tech people, they joined it because it is a great concept. It introduces new ways of doing things, new ideas, and we definitely need new ideas. But then we have the old model that tries to leverage these concepts and try to implement it, but it's really hard when you're doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. So it takes me back to why the model is so important, a new model. We've had a lot of models. Some are good, some are bad, some are efficient, some are inefficient. But one thing that's always been missing is equal access. To give you an example, let's take India, right? My bet is that, and I always make good bets, by the way, India will win. You can't compete with India. It's impossible. They're way ahead. They set up something called UPI, and immediately they went to 200 million users. You have more people under the age of 30 in India than you have in whole Europe and North America combined. So from just a pure capital perspective, let's say you all sit on a lot of money, where do you put your money? Right? There isn't a lot of people that's investing in older people, unfortunately, because it's not an attractive model. So the reason why I'm touching on India and why it's so important is because India right now can lead the change in Web3 and not just in Web3, but in the whole world. The problem there is that it goes back to the same models. I had this conversation with one of our venture arms that we have in India, and we discussed, isn't it funny that the biggest companies from Silicon Valley you have Indian CEOs? Sure, I'm not saying that they're not good, but you have to look at the actual reason for that, right? And the actual reason is that because you have a really big market there. And if you have Indian CEOs sitting on all the big companies, where do your citizens want to go, right? You have endless talent. You have a lot of buyers. And that's reality. I know that it doesn't sound attractive, but it is what it is. And I think it's really important that we actually see stuff for what it is. Because if we want to make a change, we can't approach it from our own perception. We have to look at what actually is reality and what's not. And I know that reality as a whole, it's a sensitive topic, but I always go back to cause and effect. And when we look at what's happening over in India, you have, again, 700-800 million people under the age of 30 there, and they are highly educated. They have access to technology. They have 700 to 900 million data users. So that's the future, basically. But again, even there, we see the same old models being implemented. And if we know that the same old models have the same outcome, right, then shouldn't we step in and do something about it? And then we have Africa as well. And Africa is a very interesting region, especially Nigeria. I don't know if you guys know it, but Nigeria went from 11 million to 218 million people in population in 100 years. And they are projected to have a 750 million population in the upcoming 30 years. And of course, everyone is trying to go there. Let's start with the Web3 space. Cardano was the first. Charles Hoskinson tried to make up for what he did with Ethereum. So he wanted to be the savior of Africa. And I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting. So I had a Cardano project I was building. I received $2.5 million without a product, just with an ID. I had a colleague of mine in Nigeria. He had an amazing project. He'd already built it out. And I asked him, I said, how much did you receive? He said, $50,000, right? So that's unfortunately reality. It is. So we shouldn't expect that someone will come and change anything for us. It won't happen. It doesn't work like that. That's a fairy tale. So the question goes back to, what can we do with what we know? And I heard a really good panel here just before I jumped the stage. And I liked everything that was said there. But again, that's perception of reality. It's not actual reality, right? Because we've been talking about all that for a very long time. Take me, I've done it the past 9 years, and I see the results. So going back to the root, right? And the root is actually that in society as a whole, we are very weak. We have zero focus. We are not focused. We don't have any focus left. We are so obsessed with tech, right? We are using tech. But isn't it funny that tech isn't working for us, right? We are working for tech. And isn't the whole idea behind innovation that it should make life easier for us? It should help us with more focus, right? But yet, we see innovation come and go, and in the end of the day, it's the exact same thing. So, what I want to actually share here tonight, or today, is I want to introduce a concept and a model that I'm building. We have a bunch of people with us building, and we've moved on from tech to actually implementing a new model that will actually work for a lot of people. And I know I've been touching on that model a couple of times, but I just don't want you guys to forget equal access to opportunities. And again, it goes back to building the infrastructure. So shouldn't we all, if we believe in Web3, focus on building the infrastructure for the youth, right? And if that's the metaverse, if that's DeFi, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because in the end of the day, it's about who's your targeted audience. And to be honest, the targeted audience is the youth. It's young people. It's kids. For everyone that has kids here, they play a lot of Roblox, Minecraft, right? So they're already there. We can't stop that. It's already too late, no matter what we do. So now the question is, how can we participate in that and make sure that we have a sane environment for our kids, right? And when I look at what's happening and where we put our focus, the only thing I see is NVIDIA making more money, right? Cause and effect. So it has never been about creating something that will benefit youth or kids. So for me, one thing that's crucial here is that we should start addressing the real problems. We should, even if it sounds really attractive with new trends, but it's not the solution to anything. We have to go back and think more from a logical standpoint. And what is logic in today's society, right? I would say we don't have much logic that actually benefits people. It doesn't. When we look at, like I said earlier, about decentralization, right? Really beautiful concept. But again, you can't implement it because how many tech people are out there, right? And even if we get the tech, if I ask you guys, how many people do you believe knows how to use Google? Any number. Yeah, how many people from all the users Google sit on, how many people actually knows how to use Google? 2 2 million? Billion. I would say 2 billion, that's the user base, or if not more, but how many people actually knows how to use Google? It's just the tech people. The reason why I'm sharing that is because everyone that's afraid of what's happening in the AI space, you don't need to be worried about that, because again, how many people actually knows how to use OpenAI, right? So we don't need to worry about that. We have a long way to go before anything changes there. But the reason why I'm sharing this is because we need to start sharing actual knowledge. We do. We can't just hope for a startup to come and solve the problem. It won't. And the reason why it's so important is because when we build tech, I build a lot of tech, we often see it from a different angle, and we don't see it as a way to benefit people. We don't. We really don't. We look at how can we make money, not for us even, how can we make money for our investors? And that limits us because we can use the tech for good, but we're not using it for good, right? Therefore, OpenAI, how many people actually knows how to use OpenAI? And with everything that we are creating right now, so to just share something that I'm building something called the first blockchain AI operating system. It's chain agnostic, it's always agnostic. It's something that I know UCLA and MIT and the likes, they've been publishing papers about solving that. But they can't. They're just talking about it. Take me, no background, no education, and I've built it, right? So the question is, how is that, right? Because it goes back to freedom. I know it sounds very, it's a cliche, but freedom. Why it's so important is because if you want to be able to build something for the masses, right, we want mass adoption, then that's what we actually need, freedom. And I know Finland is a very free country. I'm from Sweden. Sweden is a very free country. But I would say it's not enough. That's not the freedom I'm looking after. I'm looking after something totally different, and that's helping our kids to stay free, right? Because we won't change the world. We won't. We've seen. We have, like I said earlier, we have a lot of organizations, a lot of people have tried to do it, but they've always failed. The reason for that being is because we don't understand that the change will come through the youth. Companies use that as a source of income. They do. They know that if you get youth, you build something for youth, you have a really good customer base for many, many, many years to come. And that's the angle they are approaching it for. And we see the outcome. So when I talk about freedom, our whole concept, the whole model of equal access to opportunities is built on freedom. Have you guys seen Iron Man? So, and for all of you that have seen it, then there is something there that's called Jarvis, right? Imagine having access to a Jarvis. You don't need any money. You don't need anything. You just need Jarvis. So the question is, why aren't we building a Jarvis for our kids, right? All parents want the best for their kids. So why aren't we focusing on providing a Jarvis to every single human being on Earth? The reason is very simple. It doesn't benefit the few. It doesn't. So therefore we can't have a Jarvis, because if we have a Jarvis, you won't need money anymore. You won't need a government anymore. You have access to Jarvis. Who knows better, right? And if we look at the outcome, it's not attractive. It's not. So I've built something that's a Jarvis, and I have given it to my kid. He's 8 years old. He's building games. He's doing everything on his own. So I want to share this with everyone, but then there is a problem. I don't have the same resources as Amazon and the likes. They can do the same thing. They can monetize it. They're about to do it anyway. So I said, but if I build something this cool, right, and it's hard for me to get this out and let everyone have access to it, what can I do? then I got back to, wait a minute, tech isn't the solution. It's not. Because even if all of you would have Jarvis, right? Everyone would have different outcomes. Because it goes back to freedom. And the reason why I keep coming back to freedom is because we are not free. We are not free. The reason I say it is because, again, take me. How come that I've built something like Jarvis, right? I built something that doesn't even need any more API calls. For all of you that's tech people, I assume you understand the value of not having any API calls because we know why we even have API calls in the first place. So the question is, how can someone like me come up with this? Something that all the scientists, all the researchers have tried to solve, right? Remove API calls. And it's very simple. It's very simple. It's not that I'm special. It's just that the old model doesn't allow you to see it that way. It doesn't. The reason why we have the limitations on us and the outcome we get, it all gets back to what I said initially, right? And for me, it's really important that we all look at what we can do together and on an individual basis, what we do every day in our life, what's actually stopping us, what's limiting ourselves, right? And how can we actually break free? And I know that that's something that should be a given at this point in life, but it's not. It's not. And I would just want to highlight that for me, initially when I came here, I had a bunch of slides, I had a bunch of decks I prepared about Web3, about decentralization, about everything that's going on in tech and all the cool stuff that's coming. But then I realized that, you know what, everyone is talking about it. And we have events across the globe, everyone touching on innovation, mass adoption, but then here we are with the same exact outcome. And the reason why I want to stand here today and share this is because I believe that Finland as a country, as a society, is the closest one to actually be able to lead a change. And I'm not saying that to boost anyone's ego, that's what I actually believe. If we look at tech that's come from Finland, we have really good tech from Finland, we have. And one thing that strikes me with Finland is that the people are more open. I don't want to say that about everyone. I haven't met everyone, but from the people I've met, it's really different. It is, and it's the closest thing I've come to freedom. It is, and that's why I want to implement and set up an arm of what we do here in Finland to give equal access to opportunities to everyone. Because we have a lot of young, bright people that needs something new. They're desperate for something new. And they're desperate for a new model, right? And that's what we want to come and bring to Finland. Because we have a lot of countries that try to change their image and to the next phase. Saudi Arabia is one of them. They're betting very big. They are. Because they understand that they need to change their image, they need to do something else. That's one of the reasons why they brought Cristiano Ronaldo on, right? Because the first thing that happened when Ronaldo joined the football club there was that you had a bunch of young kids wanting to be the next Ronaldo, or even better, right? So that's what we need to do for every country, and I say that's what we need to do for Finland. We need to start there. So then the question is, how do we go about it? How can we initiate this? How can we attract young people to build stuff, to do stuff? It goes back to equal access to opportunities. And that's what we want to bring to Finland. And I think that when we look at the space that we are in, I won't say Web3, let's say tech in general, right? We have a lot of young people. They're way, way, way smarter than us. We have to accept that. I do, at least. And the only thing we actually need to do is see beyond ourselves and provide all those resources we have. And I can bet that everyone here sits on resources that they don't even are aware of. I always say that people already sit on everything they need. They do. They're just not aware of that. So what I want to leave you guys with is basically, what can you guys do to provide equal access to opportunities for your kids? Not for everyone, for anyone else, just for your own kids, right? If you think about it. And the reason why I touch on kids and parents is because, again, every parent wants the best for their kids. That's where we need to start. That's where we are starting, at least. That's what we are targeting. We are just targeting young people. We are. The reason for that, no offense to anyone again, but the youth are the future. We've said it for centuries, right? But I think now it's actual time to give them let them be in charge of the steering wheel, as I call it, right? And let them lead us. We shouldn't tell our kids what to do, how to do. We should listen to them more. And I bet you that that's the way we're going to actually accomplish this new era and this new model. Because if we don't change that, if we don't listen more to our kids and to youth, we won't actually see any different outcomes. That's what I believe. That's what our different organizations that I'm involved in believe. And we also know that at the moment there is a way bigger play at hand. It is, and we desperately need to change. And this is not something where it's not my responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. And I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but on a global scale, you have 168 nations that signed a deal with China. And what's the deal about, right? It's to buy China's AI model. So that's what's happening right now. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to trust countries like that. I really don't. And it's killing innovation, it does. And the shift that's happening right now globally, it's nothing that we can stop. We can't. We're already part of it. We've already accepted it. And the reason why we've accepted it is because we come with excuses. We need to actually do something else. We need to step up and make a difference for ourselves. That's how we actually go about it. That's how we actually start addressing those problems. And the reason why I want to touch on China was because they have even if a lot of people argue what's good and what's bad, they have something that blockchain failed with. And that's the only true power of blockchain, and that's the core problem of why it failed, was because we didn't value the incentive models. China knows how to incentivize their citizens. They do. And with blockchain, we have the same power to be able to incentivize our audience, to be able to incentivize everyone that's building, right? And I know everyone, a lot of people think that you have different solutions that's solving that, but it's not. Take Ethereum, right? It's not benefiting anyone. It's not incentivizing anyone. Even as a developer, you need to put fees on top of what you've built to be able to be incentivized. And I think that's what we need to leverage, that blockchain provides us something that's called incentives. And incentives are very powerful. And I will leave you with this. How many people are actually picking up garbage on the streets? Not many. Imagine if you pay them. Very simple, right? And that's breaking incentive down to something very simple, right? And that's what you can do. That's where people are, and that's what we need to do together to incentivize people. So we need to work on our incentive models if we want to accelerate the space together. Thank you so much, everyone. Sorry for the long speech here, but I needed to share this because I believe that Finland is the right place to start in. I do. Thank you, everyone.